5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Coming to you live as Lichtman Live. Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Hey, we're a few days away. It's nail biting time, but let me assure you, and I get asked this 100 times a day, I have not changed my prediction. It doesn't sway with the votes, excuse me, with the ephemeral events of the campaign.
There you go, Dad. This is our last live show before Election Day, before we'll be live on Election Day. Pretty exciting stuff. Today, Dad, we will be doing your Electoral College prediction map. Now, I want to preface this saying this is not based on the keys or any sort of scientific prediction model. The keys don't predict state by state. This is mostly based on your gut and your analysis of early voting, correct?
Yes, and I'd like to hear what our audience thinks. There may be people more knowledgeable than I am about the individual states. I got a very interesting email. I don't know if he's on, by a guy named Jeff Brown, who's from Arizona, might have some insights that I don't have about Arizona, a very tricky state to call.
For sure. But, Dad, before we get into the map, you had some things on your mind that you want to get off your chest. Go for it.
Yes, that's kind of a mixed metaphor, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, be careful about that.
Sorry about that.
Your old English teacher might hit you with a ruler for that.
Ah.
Ah, all right. So those of you who've been following us for a while have heard me say so many times about the error margins of the polls, that the plus and minus 3% is pure statistical error. That on top of that is at least as much error, maybe more, because people don't respond. They may lie, they may change their mind, they don't get a random sample, so they have to jigger their sample, and they don't know who the actual voters are, so they have to guess. And that at least doubles the margin of error, making the polls useless as close as they are. But that non-statistical error, Sam, is that random?
No.
No, it's unidirectional. Only the statistical error is random. And we know in 2016, the non-statistical error was underestimating Republicans. But you've heard me say for months that based on elections from the midterms through the specials of 2024, the polls seem to be underestimating Democrats. For the first time, after I've been shouting this for so long, some of the analysts have finally caught on. You ever heard of a guy named Harry Enton, Sam?
Yes, he's on CNN.
Yeah, and he's a sharp young guy like you, not as sharp as you, but fairly sharp.
I was going to say way sharper than me.
And he's a very, he's poll driven, but for a poll driven guy, he's very, very good. And he finally picked up on my point. And he said two things that indeed the last 3 years indicate now the polls have switched to underestimating Democrats. And he gave some actual statistics, which I didn't have because I don't, have all that polling data and don't want it. He said one statistic is that the Democratic performance in these last 3 years is 2 points higher than the Biden performance. And remember, Biden won the election. So to be 2 points above Biden is really something. And he won the popular vote by almost 4 points. So you're talking about 6 points. Then he said, not comparing it to the Biden vote, but just looking at the extent to which Democrats in voting have outperformed the polls, it's 4% on average. Now, we don't know if that's going to hold at all because Trump has not been on the ballot in any of these elections. They're not presidential elections. But even if that's close to holding, that would be enough to switch all the swing states, except maybe Florida and Texas, in favor of the Democrats. I'm not saying he's right, but finally, someone who has, in-depth access to the polls is catching up with Lichtman Live and telling us, hey, it may be a big polling error, That's going to favor Democrats when people actually go to vote. Second thing that's on my mind is the Supreme Court. You've heard me say I was very proud of the Supreme Court. I have a lot of praise for them in 2020. They stayed out. They didn't try to tilt the election one way or another. But I'm very concerned about the Supreme Court now because they do seem to be more aggressively Republican, overturning Roe versus Wade, reinterpreting the disqualification clause of the 14th Amendment so Trump would be off the hook, giving Trump a virtual immunity from broadly defined official acts. And maybe the most specifically electorally biased thing the Supreme Court did was just a day or two ago when they let the Virginia purge of supposed non-citizens continue. This is a true outrage because we know, going all the way back to earlier such purges in Florida and Texas, we know that such purges sweep in huge numbers of US citizens because the data on which the purges are based, the data is fundamentally flawed. Plus, it's often hard to identify citizens. People may be in the process of finalizing their citizenship. They may not have done it at the time they go into the database, but they may well have done it by the time they vote. There was a different course in Alabama where they stopped a purge of about 3,500 supposed non-citizens. This is a ruby red state, one of the most reliable Republican states in the country. And in Alabama, state officials testified that of those 3,500 purged supposed non-citizens, 2,000 of them were actual citizens. There should not be such overtly, horribly biased purging. We've known it for years, how biased it is. Federal court stopped it cold in Virginia, and then the Supreme Court let it go. The other thing that's, particularly worrisome of this Supreme Court decision, Supreme Court has always held we're not going to authorize changes close to the election. It's called the Purcell principle, and it usually applies to about 90 days. Now they're allowing a major change to occur just days before the election. So I'm more worried about the Supreme Court now than I was in 2020.
That's not good.
No,
Yeah,
I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just more worried than I was. That's all. I'm not predicting what the Supreme Court is going to do. I don't have a model for that.
right. Okay. Got everything off your chest. I know you really didn't like the Trump trash man thing. I
Oh, I thought that was awful. I thought, it was Michael Dukakis all over again. Most of you were too young to remember 1988. I remember it vividly. I was predicting H.W. Bush, and Michael Dukakis, who was being accused of being a soft guy, not being able to stand to the commies, tried to counter that by riding in a tank. And it looked so out of place, so ridiculous, so absurd. Politico called it the biggest uh, commercial backlash in American political history. I don't think it turned the election, but it was a terrible image for Dukakis. I see the same thing with Trump trying to pose like, hey, I'm just an ordinary guy, you know, I'm gonna pose in this garbage truck. He barely could get into the truck. He was so wobbly and so uncertain on his feet, and he looked so awkward and so out of place in the garbage truck, much like Dukakis did in the tank. And yes, I did a tweet on this. Biden committed an unforced error with that garbage comment that could be interpreted either ways. Trump has said worse things 500 times. Yet the media treats this one gaffe by Biden as though it's the end of the world. But I don't think politically Trump wanted to keep alive the garbage metaphor, which, was much more viciously used against Latinos by his own warm-up speaker at his own event. Of course, I never heard of him. I didn't know anything about him. I never met E. Jean Carroll, never heard of her. Project 25, what's that? I don't know. Anything that's embarrassing, Trump says, I didn't know anything about it. Jeffrey Epstein, who's that?
right. All right, Dad. You got everything off your chest and off your mind. Both
Not
things.
really, but enough for
Okay,
now.
enough. Let's get into your electoral college prediction map. I want to say we have 17,000 people watching. I think that's our record. Just some quick housekeeping. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Um, like this stream. You can follow him at Allan Lichtman on X and TikTok, at _ Lichtman on Instagram. I'm at Sammy Licht on YouTube and Instagram. All right, Dad. You ready
Tell
for
them to subscribe. We need
I
subscribers,
said
right?
that. Oh, and
Oh,
members.
yeah,
Become a member.
I'm
You meant
old. I'm
member.
old and broken down. I didn't hear it. Let's go.
Memberships. All right. Let's
Ships.
go to your gut feeling, unofficial prediction, but still prediction of the Electoral
Well, don't
College.
call it predictions. Let's say assessments.
Assessment. Okay.
And I don't want to confuse it with my real predictions.
No confusing with your real predictions. Got it.
Your
All right.
assessment.
So we've got all the obvious stuff kind of filled out already. We thought we'd leave Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin up for you to decide, Dad.
All right, I'll
Where
get
do you
rid
want to
of two
start?
real fast.
Okay.
Texas and Florida. I have been told for 20 years, I've done a tremendous amount of civil rights expert witness in Texas. And they've been telling me for 20 years, Texas is going to turn at least purple. And of those 20 years, how many Democrats have ever been elected statewide?
None.
None. So, I don't believe that Texas is going to elect a Democrat. It's not Alabama, but it's certainly at least light red.
Okay, so
Same thing with yeah,
we're saying likely red for Florida and Texas, or
likely red. And same thing with Florida. Florida is a little different from Texas. Texas was very heavily Republican, 10, 15 years ago. It's a little less so, but it's still Republican. And Florida's been going the other way. Obama won Florida in 2008, but it's been going red since then. I would say likely Republican. I'd be shocked if, either Florida or Texas went Democrat. But, as the great Benjamin Disraeli once said, finality is not a word we use in politics.
right? Okay,
Now let's go to a couple that are not as sure as Texas and Florida. Let's go to Michigan.
okay.
And
Michigan.
the polls are kind of mixed in Michigan. And, I don't go with polls, but there were some polls that showed the Democrat Harris well ahead in Michigan, 5, 6, 7 points. Michigan went pretty solidly for Biden in 2020. And I want to look at the early voting. 2.4 million ballots
Wow.
cast in Michigan. That's close to half. And I don't care about the party distribution because there are so many others. We don't know how they're going to vote. I look at the gender, 55% women, 45% men. We know there's going to be a huge gender gap in this election. And Donald Trump seems determined to inflame it. What did he say today? I'm going to be your protector, women, whether you like it or not.
Did he say that?
The Handmaid's Tale.
I didn't even hear him
Like
say that.
controlling women. What's that, Sam?
I didn't hear him say that.
Yeah, Mom told me he said that, and
Mm,
Mom is gospel. I heard something like that, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said. Let's offend everyone. We don't care about you.
right.
It's only what I want, not what any woman might want.
Right.
I mean, you might as well throw a rock at a fish if you're trying to catch it.
Ha
It's just
ha.
crazy.
That's a good one, Dad.
Thanks. So Michigan is 55-45 women to men. Interestingly, no unknown. A lot of other states have a lot of unknowns. So I'd say Michigan leans D.
Leans blue. Why
Yeah.
isn't it clicking? There we go. Okay. Leans blue.
And I've seen similar polling in Wisconsin, and we have similar, if I can get it up. Second here. We have a similar but nowhere near as big a gender divide in Wisconsin and nowhere near as many ballots. So it's only 1.2 million ballots, although it's a smaller state. Women 51, men 43, unknown 6. I don't know what the unknown are, but there's probably quite a few of there who are transgenders or non-binary, and those folks are not going to vote for Trump. So it may be a similar 55-45 divide in Wisconsin. So I would say it leans blue, but just leans,
Right.
not anywhere near solid.
Okay.
So I skip Pennsylvania. Let's go to North Carolina,
Okay.
where the polls, for their worth, are dead even. And North Carolina is leading the country in ballots.
Right.
Well more than half. I mean, we don't know exactly what the turnout's going to be, but somewhere around 6 million. And we already have 3.6 million ballots cast. So more than half of the votes are already in.
Right.
And what did I say about early votes compared to election day votes, Sam?
I don't remember.
A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush,
All
right?
right.
On election day, you may have family issues, health issues, work issues, bad weather. You might just decide it's not worth it. There's going to be a fall off for those who claim, we're going to vote on election day,
Right.
probably as large as 10%. So
Right.
I would say North Carolina leans blue.
North Carolina leans blue. All right. So right now we're at Kamala at 267 and Trump at 219.
Right. Georgia.
Georgia.
Also, also more than half of the votes already in, 3.6 million.
Mm-hmm.
Women 56%, men 44%. It's a huge lead.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say Georgia leans blue.
Really?
And all these states are going to go blue. I mean, these are very narrow.
Right.
I'm more confident, frankly, that Texas and Florida will go red than in these other states will go blue. All right, Arizona,
Wait, hold on one second. If this falls as is, Kamala wins. She's already past the 270 mark.
without even Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yeah. All right, Arizona,
Yeah.
1.7 million ballots, not half, but close.
Right.
And the gender divide is much closer. 48% women, 43% men, 9% unknown.
Right.
So I would say Arizona probably leans ever so slightly red.
Okay. And that would be a change from 2020.
It would, but remember how narrowly he won Arizona,
Right.
by under 1 point. So
Right.
not a dramatic change. So we're in, what's the next one up there?
Nevada.
Nevada, also won by Biden.
Wait, is it Nevada or Nevada? I gotta know.
Nevada.
Okay.
And that is the only state where men are ahead, and barely.
Mm.
But there's only 887 ballots cast. So men are 45, women are 44, unknown are 11. I'd say slightly red.
Leans red.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever this is worth. We emphasize,
Right.
take this for what it's worth. It's a lot of guesswork.
Right.
I don't have a system, I don't have a formula.
We have
It's a lot of
30,000 people.
guesswork.
We have 30,000 people watching.
Wow. And
That's
I'm sure they'll chip in. I want to hear what the people think. Some
right.
of you may know these states
Uh-oh.
far better than I do. You know, I've lived all my life in heavily Democratic states, New York, Massachusetts, and Maryland. Never
Right.
been lived in the swing states. And I spent a year in California.
Right.
So the last one is Pennsylvania.
Right.
I'm surprised there aren't more ballots cast. It's a pretty big state.
Yeah.
There'll be at least 6 million ballots there, and it's only 1.6 million to this point, but a huge lead for women, 56 to 43. Now,
Right.
the polls are suggesting Pennsylvania is going to go red, but they're so close that you really can't go by the polls, maybe, except maybe Texas and Florida and any of these states. None of them are more than 2 points, and a lot of them are 1 point or less.
Right.
Uh, Pennsylvania, let's say toss up.
Total toss up?
I don't have enough votes and early votes to make an assessment.
Interesting. Okay. Well, even with this assessment, the Democrats win two, well, obviously Pennsylvania is going to go either red or blue, but even without predicting Pennsylvania, it's a Kamala Harris win with this map.
Because of North Carolina and Georgia.
Yeah,
But if
definitely.
Pennsylvania goes blue, she doesn't need North Carolina or Georgia, right?
Right. So
Make
let's
Pennsylvania blue
right.
and make the others neutral. See how many she gets.
I'll just make them red for the sake
That's
of.
fine.
Yeah, she's exactly at 270. And then,
Exactly at 270 because of that one district in Nebraska.
yeah, which,
So she doesn't need any Sun Belt states. If she wins the three Rust Belt states, it's over.
right.
And I'm pretty confident she's going to win Wisconsin and Michigan because of so few ballots cast in Pennsylvania. It's very, very difficult
Hmm.
to assess.
I think she's going to win PA.
I do too, but you know, we're both probably a little bit biased. I'm not biased in my predictions because I have a system,
Right.
but after the system, it's easy to let bias creep in.
I think last week on
I think
my
she will win Pennsylvania. I
I think
agree with that.
I think last week on my live I said I think it's going to turn out um like this. I think that's what
That's a huge win.
yeah. Now, on my electoral map that I did a few months ago, I had it like this. But I don't think that's still the case, but
I don't think so.
all right, so your Allan Lichtman's official unofficial prediction, or as he likes to call it, analysis is
That's not a prediction. Please.
okay.
I don't want people to come back and say Lichtman predicts the Democrats are going to win Georgia. That's not what's going on here.
Okay.
Just giving you an assessment, not
Right.
a prediction. I repeat, not a prediction.
Allan Lichtman's assessment, not a prediction, is this, correct?
Correct. And I really want to hear from what our audience thinks.
Okay. Do you want to do a poll first?
Sure.
All right. Do you want to do Pennsylvania first, or what state do you want to do first?
Oh, Pennsylvania is the critical one. If that goes blue, I think it's over.
All right. So is this simple question: do you think Pennsylvania will go blue? Yes or no?
Correct.
Or which way will Pennsylvania go, blue or red? Which one do you like better?
Probably the second one is a little
Okay.
more neutral.
Which way will PA go? Blue, Harris, red, Trump. Now, you were talking about there being some bias. I mean, our audience is usually pretty blue, so there may be some bias in our polling as well, but hey,
We understand that, and there's bias in all the polls.
yeah.
One thing we might want to tell our audience, when are we coming on election day?
That's a
We're obviously going to come on well before 9 p.m., right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I took off of work on election day, so we're all good. Sorry, my dog
Oh,
is scratching
what
at my
time are we
door.
going to come on?
What time do the first polls close? Like
7 o'clock
7
Eastern.
Eastern. So we'll say like 6:30 Eastern. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's
Or do
fine.
you want to do later?
Look
Or
at
it's up to
7
you.
Eastern, just to
S-
round it off. You won't
7.
have any results before then.
Kiko just opened. My dog just opened my door.
No.
Yes, my dog
How
just
did you do
opened my
that?
door. Kiko. Here, I'll show people Kiko. Come here, Bubba. This little pup. He just opened my door
Oh
because
my God.
I have like a handle door like this. So
Yeah.
he jumped up and pushed it down and pushed with his
Wow.
nose and he got in.
Oh, Kiko. That's
Awesome.
unbelievable.
All right. Well, not only do
So
we
how's
have
our poll doing?
what's that?
How's our poll doing?
Our poll. Yeah, let's check in with our poll. Um 85% of our audience thinks that it will go blue in Harris's favor.
Even with a bias in the audience, that's still pretty heavy.
Six
All right,
thou-
how
6,000
many how
people.
many responses
6,000.
and how many viewers?
30,000 viewers.
Nice. All right,
Nice.
you want to do North Carolina?
Let's do North Carolina. All right, we're ending the PA poll.
Yep.
Um,
Samuel.
yes. Oh, you're drinking water.
Yep.
Which way will North Carolina go? Blue, Harris, red, Trump. All right, let's see what people say. All right, you want to get to some questions while we're waiting?
Absolutely. Or comments. I'm interested if someone has expertise in any of these states, which we don't. As I said, I've never lived in a swing state, and you haven't either.
Correct. Um, yeah, not even close. I lived in Maryland, D.C., New York, Massachusetts, California. Like as almost as blue as you can possibly get.
Same with me. New York, Massachusetts, and Maryland and California.
Wait, have we lived in the exact same states? I just realized that.
I'd, uh, I live in DC. Yes, I did live in DC too when I first came to American University. So you
Wow.
lived in, right? You're following in your illustrious dad's
I
footsteps,
didn't even realize it. Huh.
right? So what does our poll say? Or is it too
Um,
early?
let's give it a second. I'll throw a question your way.
Yeah, I want to hear questions or comments.
Okay. Deja Vu says, I've been meaning to ask you this for a while, Dr. Lichtman. I've heard you say that the vice president has nothing to do with the keys. I'm wondering what, during your research, surprised you that it was not a key. Love your show from Australia. Thank you, Deja Vu.
Yeah, when we looked, Kyle and I did our pattern recognition from 1860 to 1980. We put that in, and it wasn't predictive at all. It actually created some errors. So I was surprised empirically that it didn't matter, even though who was I advocating for vice president, Sam? It wasn't
Um,
Tim Walz.
was it Shapiro?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. I said, I don't think on the keys that vice presidents make a difference, but maybe even if he swung a few thousand votes her way in Pennsylvania, it could make a difference in that one state.
And
I
now
thought she made a mistake in who she picked. I didn't think Waltz added a damn thing to the ticket.
and now you got Pennsylvania as a pure toss-up.
Yeah, I think if Stein had been the nominee, it would have been different. But who knows? I don't
Stein.
like the deal in Shapiro. I don't like Stein's the guy in North Carolina.
Oh,
I don't
oh,
like to deal in hypotheticals.
true. All
But
right.
you can vouch that that Shapiro was my guy.
I can vouch.
All right,
All right.
Paul.
We'll end the poll. It's at 6,000 votes. 70% say North Carolina will go blue in Harris's favor.
Well, I think that's more maybe more accurate. They seem to be more confident about Pennsylvania, and maybe they're right. Let's try Georgia.
Georgia. All right, but you have to go. Georgia.
I'm not going
Come
there.
on.
I was like the one designated listener in my
Right.
junior high school. Don't laugh. It's
Too
been a
late.
long time since I've been in junior high school,
Too late.
and
I
it's
already.
only gotten worse.
Too late. I already laughed. How can I unlaugh? All right. Which way will Georgia go? Blue for Harris or red for Trump? All right.
Get some more questions.
Our next question is from Bjorn Michael Lang. They say the three blue wall states have voted Democratic in the last 7 out of 8 presidential elections. They voted in bloc in 10 out of the last 11 presidential elections. Combined with the 13 keys, this points to Harris winning all three of them, right?
I appreciate that. This is why I'm asked the audience to bring in their knowledge. I kind of knew they had, for the most part, gone blue for a long time, but I didn't research those exact statistics, and that's very powerful. And I would say, given that, maybe we need to move Pennsylvania into the lean Democrat.
So you're changing your analysis.
No, well, maybe. Let's hear more, but that was very astute.
Okay. Very astute from Bjorn.
Absolutely.
Vincent Escalano says, I see Trump surging past 200 electoral votes early in the night with calls in Florida, Ohio, and Texas, but he will stall out after. Harris will catch up later when the West Coast reports, so no one panic. Do you agree with him?
Absolutely. Do not panic. Remember 2020, early voting favored, early counting favored Trump. He even declared victory, said, I won. Who cares what he says? It doesn't
Right.
mean anything. But yes, do not panic prematurely if you want Harris to win. Now, remember, my prediction is totally nonpartisan. I predicted Trump, which caused me great agony. in Washington, D.C. I predicted Reagan, which caused me great agony. But like everybody else, I do have my own political views, which have nothing to do with my predictions.
Right. All right, Georgia. Do we want to? We're at 5,800 votes. Do you want to know, or do you want to wait till we hit 6,000?
No, that's good enough. It's not
All
going to
right.
change.
With 5,800 votes in, our audience says there is a 69% chance, or 69% of them think that it will go blue in Harris's favor.
Wow.
All
Wow.
right.
All right, so let's move on to Arizona,
Okay.
which I had leaning red.
Yes. Okay.
But you notice, except for Texas and Florida, all the states that we're looking at are either light blue or light red. None of them are locked one way or the other.
Sure. That makes total sense.
Yeah, Arizona.
I put it up. It's up, Dad. It's up. Don't you worry,
All
sir.
right,
It's up. All
let's
right.
get some questions or comments.
Harry Chittenden says, "Oh, I forgot. Today's Halloween, Dad. So happy Halloween."
Oh, happy Halloween. Did you go trick or treating?
I did not. No,
Oh,
I'm a little old for that.
I'm not too old for that. You know, the age kind of reverses when you
Yeah,
get to a certain point.
that's true. Harry wants to know, what do you think? What did you dress up for as Halloween, Dad?
I dressed up as an old, doddering, broken down professor.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
I didn't dress up today, but on Saturday night I dressed up. I was
Halloween
a
party.
Yeah, I was a ghost cowboy. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Sure can.
I didn't dress up this evening, but also happy Diwali. If anybody
That's right. Yeah.
is watching from India, happy Diwali.
I get
Um,
more requests for interviews from India than any other place. I guess with 1.3 billion people, it's not a surprise. I'm getting oversubscribed on interviews, you know. I'm turning down a lot because I just getting more than I can handle. I hope no one's offended, but it's just too much.
yeah, it is what it is. You're only one human being. You can only appear and talk so many times, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm wearing down. I love the interviews. Don't get me wrong, and they energize me. I love them, but it does get a little overwhelming. I have a student from Scotland, an exchange student. She says she gets all of this uh, communications from her relatives in Scotland saying, "Hey, we see your professor all the time here in Scotland." I don't even remember doing an interview in Scotland, but I guess the stuff gets disseminated.
Let's hear your best Scottish accent.
No, you're not going to hear it.
Ah, damn it. All right.
All right, Paul,
Oh, poll.
Arizona, right?
Arizona. We're at we're almost at 6,000. Come on, folks. Vote, vote, vote. Okay, we hit 6,000. 54% of our audience believe it will go blue. So that's our smallest margin yet.
Yeah, and it's the one I picked to be at light red.
Correct.
Nevada,
All right, we're ending the Arizona poll and we're going to the Nevada poll. Is it Nevada or Nevada? Somebody in the
Nevada,
what are you basing that off of?
being an inveterate gambler. I don't gamble anymore though. I'm past that.
What
Too
is the
old.
Okay. You're not a degenerate gamble. You've never
I'm
been
not
a
a,
degenerate.
I'm not a degenerate anything.
don't accuse yourself of something that you're actually not.
I know. I'm about as straight arrow as you can find.
All right. The Nevada poll is up. Um, let's see here. CJ says too many people believe that Trump or Harris are either hated or loved. Kamala is playing that Trump is hated. Trump is playing that he's loved. If both have truth, Harris has to have those that hate Trump vote for her. It's maybe a problem for her. Did you understand that? I didn't quite understand that question.
Vaguely, but how would you know that? I talked about this sharp guy, Harry Enton. He had something else interesting. He said, from his point of view, the best predictor is not the horse race polls, which I found incredible. It's approval rating. And he said in the last 17 elections, the candidate with the higher approval rating won 16 times, and the candidate with the lower approval rating won once. And he said Harris does have a higher approval rating, so that might suggest a positive for Harris. But on the other hand, he said, you know, when the great majority of Americans think the country's going in the wrong direction, the incumbent party usually loses. And, something like 60 some odd percent of Americans think the country's going in the wrong direction. So, you can take any of these poll numbers and kind of, piece them out any way you want. That's why the keys are so different. They're 13 indicators. So, you're not resting a call on a single indicator or even a small number.
Gotcha.
We have a Nevada poll.
We have our Nevada poll. It's almost at 6,000. Come on, guys. Get it to 6,000 votes. We're at 5,700 votes. 5,800. Are you sleepy? Yes, you're yawning and rubbing your eyes, Dad.
Yeah, it's been a long day on my teaching day.
All right. We've hit 6,000 votes. 73% say it will go blue for Harris.
Interesting. That's pretty robust.
Hmm.
That's about, like Georgia. All right.
Georgia.
Do we put that light blue now?
You're gonna let the audience sway your
Hey,
map.
you understand some of these calls are like knife edge
I
calls.
know, I know. It's hey, this is your
Leave it-
this is your
leave
map.
it.
You can do whatever you want to it.
Wow. Just leave it.
Leave it.
Leave it.
All right.
So Wisconsin.
All right. The next poll is for Wisconsin. Okie dokie. Folks, we want to know in the audience oops, I spelled which wrong. Which way will Wisconsin go? Blue for Harris or red for the Trumpster? All right. That poll is up. You ready for our next question, Dad?
I'm always ready.
Fabricator General says or asks, do you think Biden's garbage remark is similar to Clinton's deplorables comment in 2016? Would either one be considered part of the scandal key?
Well, Clinton wasn't the president. So remember, the scandal key only applies to the president. So that's irrelevant. And this is far, far from a scandal. It's a goof. It's a gaffe. Biden's a gaffe machine. Plus, it was ambiguous. It wasn't clear what he was referring to. Clinton's was crystal clear what she was referring to. She specifically said, the Trump supporters. Biden claims, and, it's 50-50 how you parse it. He was really just talking about the one offensive remark. But it says, I've gone incognito. What does that mean?
Oh, don't worry about it.
Okay. So, no, I don't think it's at all comparable and certainly not a scandal.
That's so funny. I was just switching the tabs because I wanted to show our next question is about early voting, so I just wanted to show the early voting one. Um,
Okay.
so Dudley Murdoch says, are Democrats leading in early voting in Pennsylvania and Michigan? This NBC News early voting map is really helpful, so let's check it out. Did you already talk about this? I can't remember now.
I already
Um,
talked about gender. I didn't remember
uh,
I said it's more accurate, but I'm happy to look at party breakdown. Let's
uh,
try Pennsylvania first.
look at the screen, Dad. Look at the screen. It's on your screen too.
Oh,
Can you see that or no?
wow. Very big lead for Democrats.
Yes.
58 to 32, 10% other. So let's presume the others break evenly, right?
Right.
And I think that's less than optimistic for Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be 63-37. In 2020, I think someone put up a statistic, I'm not sure. It was pretty close to that. It was like 70-30. But, that was a very unusual election when Trump was saying, don't vote by mail, it's rigged. Now the Republicans have made a big push to try to get votes by mail and early voting. But also the reason I'm not real crazy about calling Pennsylvania. It's only 1.6 million votes. Look at
Right.
Georgia and North Carolina, over 3 million, smaller
Right.
states.
Right. True. What was his other
And what
question?
was the other one he wanted?
Let me check.
Michigan.
Michigan, yes. Michigan is 50 or 47% Dem, 42% Republican, 11% other.
Not much of a lead there. But when you look at the gender, it's a much bigger lead. But there's a lot more ballots cast there,
That's
2.4
gender.
million.
Yeah.
That's not a big lead,
No, it's not a giant lead for
only
sure.
5 points. But again, a lot of others.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's look at our poll. Our poll
This
for
is the
Wisconsin.
Michigan poll.
This is Wisconsin.
I was sure. I thought we did
I'm
Michigan.
sure I'm looking at it, Pops. It says, which way
All
will
right.
Wisconsin go?
All right.
88% say blue for Harris. So that's a pretty big
That's
margin from our
consistent with
audience.
what I said. So
Yeah.
what's the last state? Michigan?
Michigan. We want you and the audience to ask, which way will Michigan go? Blue for Harris or red for Trump? Oops. All right. The Michigan poll is officially in there like swimwear. All right, let's get to another question from Jacobs Travail. They say there's noise that PA looks bad because of low Dem early turnout. We were just talking about that. But higher Republican early turnout. They say the trend verse 20 and 2022 looks bad for Harris. Thoughts?
What state are they talking about?
Pennsylvania. So basically what we just talked about.
Yeah, we saw it wasn't all that much different from 2020 when Republicans were discouraged from sending mail-in ballots. So to the extent, Republicans have tried for a push and Democrats are still well over 60%, that may leach away uh, election day Republican votes. So you got to be really careful in making any comparison to the pandemic year of 2020. It's a very kind of tricky analysis to do.
Speaking of leaching votes from Republicans, Tyler K says 12% of Republicans in Pennsylvania plan to vote for Harris. No possible math for Trump to top that. Biden got less than 3% of Republicans in 2020.
I don't know where that statistic comes from, so I can't comment. But if that's true, Harris is going to win Pennsylvania. I mean, all the polls I've seen, and I don't think they were specific to Pennsylvania, suggested, more like 6 or 7% of Republicans voting for Harris. But if it's 12%, Trump's finished because 95% of Democrats are going to vote for Harris. And the independents probably tilt Harris. So if they lose 12% of Republicans, it's over. Maybe that person could tell us what the source is so we can check it out. But without a source, I don't know the answer.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, even if she gets half of that, even if she gets 6%, that'll be pretty big, right?
That's probably what I would have expected. 6% of Republicans, 4 to 5% of Democrats. But if she's anywhere near 12, it's over.
Yeah, for sure. All right, should we
But
check in?
I can't vouch for that number.
Right. All right, should we check in with the poll, Dad?
What are we on, Michigan?
We're on Michigan. 31,000 people watching, Dad. If you're
Damn good.
if you're just joining us, this is right now Allan's analysis of the Electoral College. Not an official prediction, not tied to the keys, but just as analysis. You know what, Dad? I'm gonna force you to pick to call Pennsylvania. But before we get to that,
We need the
we
Michigan
need the
poll.
Michigan. 90% of our audience thinks that Michigan will go blue in Harris's favor.
You know what? We understand our audience, is not a typical cross section of the public. They're more liberal than the general public, but they've
Sure.
been very discerning. For example, it was only 54% in Arizona, I think. So it's not like they're just automatically claiming these states are going blue.
Right.
They've really differentiated among the states and given us as we expect from our very smart audience, quite a nuanced picture.
for sure.
And
Um,
you need to tell them this is our last show. Again, I know you said it once, but you need to remind them. Last show before the election when we go on at 7
right.
East.
And if you're watching and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Please like the stream. That'd be extremely helpful. All of that's free. All right, Dad. I'm gonna force you to pick Pennsylvania. No toss-ups here. We want an official Allan Lichtman map. We want you to pick Pennsylvania.
When you say pick, remember it's not a prediction.
Right.
It's just a gut. And all right, if I had to pick it, I'll go with our poll. What did our poll say? It was overwhelming blue, right?
Let me let me see if I can see. I don't know if I can look back at polls. Let me see.
I'm pretty sure it was overwhelmingly for blue.
Yeah, I do not believe I can look back at polls.
But do you remember that too? It was somewhere around 80% or more.
Yes, I believe
So
so.
you forced me to make an assessment, not a prediction. I would turn it blue.
All right.
Again, light blue, obviously.
All right.
None of these swing states are dark red or dark blue.
Right. All right. This is your official map. I'm gonna say it here, Dad. This is your official map. Your official analysis of the map, not a prediction.
Not a
302,
prediction and not based on a model.
302 for Kamala, 236 for Republicans and Trump, with the swing states going red Arizona, red Nevada, and blue Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Can I be honest with you, Dad?
What's that?
Can I be honest with you?
Uh, this is almost exactly the Electoral College breakdown of 220. It's not exactly the same states because Biden lost North Carolina and won Arizona and Nevada, which kind of canceled, but it's almost the exact Electoral College breakdown as we saw in 2020.
Can I be
So it's
honest?
certainly not an unreasonable assessment.
Can I be honest with you?
What's that?
Can I be honest with you?
I'm not sure you can, but I can't stop you.
I like your map.
So let's take a poll.
Oh,
How many people think this map is accurate?
okay, that's a good pull.
Yeah.
I like the map. I don't want to sway people, but I think
Hey, I
if I
don't think they'll listen to you anyway. Don't worry.
nobody listens to me, right? I think if I had to do a poll today, I think I would do the exact same poll actually.
All right,
So
see what our audience thinks.
what's the exact question again?
Do you think this map accurately represents the final results? Just a yes or no. Or maybe yes, no, undecided.
Yeah, yes, no, undecided. Who would click undecided?
Who knows?
All right. Yes, no, undecided. Okay.
All
All right,
right,
that
ready for more questions and comments.
ready for more questions and comments, right? Let me
I'd
get
love to hear from someone who really knows Pennsylvania on the ground, which we don't, of course.
um yeah, I don't know how we would get the chat is going nuts.
I know, you
I
never
can't even
know.
read it. I don't know how we would do that.
Don't worry about it. Let's get questions.
Sure. Let me try to find a good one. Here's a good one from Nathan Zadra, one of our members. They say, "Greetings, greetings from Sydney, Alan and Sam. Let's hear your best Australian accent, Dad."
You're not going to get that either.
Damn it. They say, "My question is, do you think that we will know the victor by the end of the voting night, or will it take some time for the winner to become apparent?" It's a good question.
The conventional wisdom says no.
Really?
It'll
Damn
take,
it.
that's the conventional wisdom, which is almost always wrong, don't forget.
Oh,
So, again, this is not a prediction. I don't have a model for this. My gut tells me we're going to know. Maybe not early on election night, but, by the time, see, we might know early because the swing states, which I have going blue, are either East Coast or Midwest.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be, like California coming in at 2 in the morning or whatever Eastern time. They'll be in by 10, and maybe we'll already know how those states are going. If Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are called for the D's, it's over.
Yeah, but I mean, we know in 2020 Georgia and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin took a while.
Took a while, I know.
Yeah,
We'll see.
we'll see. Rod G says this election is not about Dems versus Republicans. It's democracy versus authoritarianism. Victory. God bless the USA. Vote. Thank you for your donation.
I
Cam
couldn't agree more. I've been saying that for months.
Camus says, FYI, early voting also has synergy with, quote, ground game because ground game can more effectively target undecideds. What do you think about that?
Ground game is incredibly important. Uh, I don't know who has a better ground game. I would suspect because Trump is pretty lazy, that Harris has a better ground game, but uh, I can't prove that.
Right. Tanner Johnson says, we just had our first child, a baby girl, hoping and praying that our daughter will not have less rights than our mothers and grandmothers.
I'm with you on that. It's so scary, when someone declares, I don't care what you think, I'm going to control your life. That's chilling. That's bone chilling.
Amen. Ice Cream Truck says, how much should we expect racism or sexism against Kamala Harris to affect the outcome?
It could certainly could. I can't predict that. It's not a key. Uh, but I'll talk about that more after the election. You can't know in advance.
Right.
How's our poll doing?
Oh, right. I forgot about our poll. Our poll has 7,500 votes.
Wow,
Do you think
a
this
record.
map accurately represents the final results? 58% say yes, 27% say no, and 15% say undecided.
Okay, that's pretty good ratification. Again, not from a random sample of
Right,
voters.
right.
And by the way, the polls aren't random samples either. You know why not?
No,
Because you can set out a random sample model. The problem is people don't respond. You got a 5% response, and it's not going to any longer represent your random sample, right? Some groups will respond more than others. So you have a skewed sample. And you know how they deal with skewed samples, Sam?
no.
They reweight them. So if they're undercounting white men, they weight the white men's response more to achieve the correct proportion of white men in the electorate. Another source of error, since we have no idea, whether these weightings are anywhere near accurate.
All right. Thank you, Joseph, for your donation. They say, let's go USA. Alejandro says, votes haven't been counted yet, so make your vote count. That's true. You still got plenty of time to vote if you want to vote.
Yeah, in many states you can still vote earlier. If you had an absentee ballot, send it in. It's about unless you want to put it in a Dropbox, I wouldn't send it in any later because of the post office under DeJoy is so awful.
Flex1718 says, PA isn't reporting in-person voting, just mail-in. Trump has never won Nevada. Both will be blue. Well, nobody's reporting in-person voting yet, right? Or are
No,
they saying just mail-in? Just mail.
oh, I wasn't aware of that. That may be why the
Oh,
number is so low, because there are two sources of early voting.
right,
It's kind of a misnomer. One is a mail-in, the other is what your mom and I did, go to an early voting center and vote
right,
before the election. You're
right,
still voting in person, but you're not voting on election day. And I was not aware that, unlike North Carolina and Georgia,
right.
Pennsylvania only counts mail-ins.
Right. That makes sense because we were kind of surprised how low the numbers in PA were, being how big of a state it is. That kind of answers that question.
Right, but we of course don't know the breakdown then of the early voters as opposed to the early mail-in voters, if I'm
Right.
making sense. the
Right.
early in-person voters.
Right. All right. Adorian 101 says, Dr. Lichtman, my Mexican mom loved you saying gracias on CNN Espanol today. According to Open Secrets, Clinton got 18% in small dollar donations and lost. Biden 38% and won. Kamala is now at 42%. Any correlation? Thoughts?
It's not part of my prediction, so I can't, you know, make a predictive statement about it. But if I was the Harris campaign, I'd be very encouraged about that. And thank you for commenting on my limited Espanol on CNN Espanol. It was a great interview. I was so glad to speak to our Spanish speaking audience.
There you go. Member Marcus Lewis says Wisconsin's ground game is strong. Harris will win the Badger State. All right, there's someone from Wisconsin.
I'm glad to get some information from Wisconsin because I don't have any. And, one of the problems, and not in my prediction, but in making these assessments, there's so much misinformation
Right.
floating around. And it takes so much time and energy and effort to sort through it. For example, you've heard me say before, I'm very suspicious of the betting markets because I think, the billionaires are manipulating them. And I just saw a story the other day that seemed to validate that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't investigate everything.
Sure. Bernard Baker says, thanks for your insight and accuracy. Thank you, Bernard Baker. Clay Schneider says, what about the possibility of a tie? Um,
Incredibly unlikely. The last time we had a tie was 1800 under a rather drastically different system when you didn't have tickets, when electors voted for two candidates, and the first candidate was elected president, the second elected vice president. But because you're voting for two, it wasn't that difficult to have a tie between, of course, Jefferson and Burr in 1800, which means the election goes to the House. But, there hasn't been one since then.
if that one Nebraska seat goes red and she loses North Carolina and Georgia, it could be a tie. But
Could be.
but
But that's
we were looking at
very
that.
unlikely that that seat goes red. It's much more, it's Omaha. It's much more reliably blue than Wisconsin or Michigan, even.
Right, for sure. All right. This is back to your official prediction. Oh, people want a Texas and Florida poll, Dad, even though you were quick to call it red. Do you
All
want to
right.
do Texas and Florida?
Yes. In fact, I just got a text from your mom saying people in the chat are asking for Texas and Florida. She's way ahead of us as always.
Dad, guess what? I got the same text.
Oh,
And that's
well,
why
you're
I brought
both
it
way
up.
ahead of me. Let's put it that way.
All right, we've got 10,000 total votes in for your map. Do you think it's accurate? 57 say yes, 26 say no, 16 are undecided. So the
Pretty good
majority
validation.
think that you've
Yeah.
got a good map, Dad, and that it accurately
Yeah.
represents the final results.
Whatever it's worth. It's not a prediction.
All right, let's start. What do you want to start with, Texas or Florida? I guess it doesn't really matter, right?
No, start with Texas. And the reason I keep saying that so many times is I can't tell you how many, respectable journalists said, didn't you predict Biden to win? Did I ever predict Biden would win, Sam?
Did you ever predict Biden would win?
Yeah, that, before the big transition, did I make an
Oh,
official prediction?
no, no, no,
Of
no, no,
course
no.
not. My first prediction was September 5th when Harris was the candidate.
In fact,
I didn't
you were
say a lot would have to go wrong for Biden to lose, but I said it could happen. I'm not made an official prediction yet.
Yeah, I would say you were crystal clear. You were like a parrot repeating yourself every interview I saw you do.
I guess
Um,
not a,
I was confused 'cause I thought you were talking about 2020, and I was like, you did predict Biden would win in 2020, but I
oh,
see what you're
yes,
saying.
yes, absolutely. The video is still up on YouTube, 3.4 million views, 3.1 million views for the Harris video.
Right.
Maybe
Jean
it's higher than that. I hadn't checked it recently.
Carlos Garcia says, in the event Speaker Johnson refuses to certify a Harris win, what steps, if any, can President Biden take to force certification given the Supreme Court decision to give presidents carte blanche.
Yeah, he could imprison all the Republicans in the House so they can't vote
Jesus,
against certification. That's not going to happen.
that's intense.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Mike Dunn says, my prediction is exactly the same. The blue wall, North Carolina, Georgia, but lose Arizona and Nevada. 70% early voting. TRS 50 years old plus 10% gender difference. Women will win it for Harris.
Yeah, I don't understand why Trump insists on antagonizing the women of America and patronizing them and diminishing them, treating like children who need to be protected. What does he think he's gaining from that? He's probably already got all the juice he could possibly get out of the men's vote, and all he's doing is antagonizing women who are more likely to be on the fence, the suburban women. He needs them in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia.
For sure. Sean Breen says, my grandmother is nearly 90. She grew up in rural Ohio and has always been a Democrat and cannot understand why people would vote against the party of the working class.
Trump has convinced people, a lot, not everyone, but a lot, and I don't know how, that he and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel are the great friends of working class Americans, even though they're trying to destroy unions, uh, impose tariffs that's going to increase prices for ordinary working class Americans by $4,000 a year and give huge tax cuts to the rich and the corporations. I don't get it. It does kind of baffle me.
Right. All right, let's check in.
Elon Musk, the great friend of the working class.
Yeah, let's check in on the poll. We got almost 4,500 votes on the Texas poll. 61% say it's going to go red for Trump.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen.
All
And I
right.
guess the last one is Florida.
You're correct, sir. People in the
And you can
audience.
see our audience is not just knee jerk counting everything for Democrats. They're very discerning.
Yes. All right, folks, if you're watching, we want to know, which way will the state of Florida go? Will it go blue for Vice President Harris, or will it go red for former president and former Trump University president Donald Trump? All right. That poll is out. All right. How many more we're over an hour. How many more questions you want? How
Three
many?
more questions. And remember, my last predictions, Trump in 2016, Biden in 2020, and Harris in 2024.
Right. You're pretty clear about that, sir.
Yeah,
I
but it's amazing how even really good journalists don't get it quite right because they've got to cover a million things, and they're quickly glancing at things I said.
yeah, I, yeah, no doubt. Um, I
Three
am
more
pu-
questions.
I am putting the link to the Lichtman Live post show in the chat. Oh, I just lost it. Let me pin it. Wow, the chat is moving so quickly I can't even find it anymore. There it is. Um, I pinned the link to the Lichtman Live post show in the chat. There's also a link to it in the description of this video. So if you're sad that Lichtman Live is going off the air, the good news is the post show will continue with me. You won't have the expert analysis of Allan Lichtman, but I'm funny. I don't know. I don't know if I'm actually funny.
You're funnier than me?
No, probably not. So
I don't think so.
you gain
Yeah.
nothing from my show, but at least it continues. That's what you gain, a continuation.
And you gain someone a lot younger and sharper
That is
too.
true. I am objectively younger. That is true. Patzer Chess says, I live in Michigan and it typically goes blue. I think PA will go blue because of the Rust Belt that's voted together since 1992. I don't see that changing. Guitar Hero Arrow says, how do you think other races affect the presidential race? Carrie Lake in Arizona, Mark Robinson in North Carolina, abortion referendum in Arizona.
Yeah, usually down ballot races don't affect the presidential race, but conversely, the presidential race can very much affect down ballot races. Although, really, in the last probably since the 70s, much less so than before. You know, Eisenhower won a huge blowout in 56. Democrats still held the House and the Senate. Uh, Reagan won a big blowout in 84. They split the House and the Senate. Nixon won a huge blowout in 72. Democrats still held the House and the Senate. So while it has some effect, really not as much as it might once have had.
Jeremy, no, Alex, wait. Jeremy, we talked about the Puerto Rico stuff last week. Thank you for your donation. Alex Ringgold says, I live in Georgia. I think Georgia will go blue again for Harris. I just hope the same thing happens down ballot. What are your general thoughts on the House and Senate?
Yeah, I've said this many times. I don't have models. I think Democrats have a good shot at taking back the House. I think they will be lucky to hold on to the Senate because the map is so bad for them. And they're essentially starting out 50-50 because we know West Virginia's gone. So they can't afford even one net against them
Um,
beyond West Virginia.
Artem Abramov says Trump has already claimed fraud in Pennsylvania. Do you think that is a sign that Pennsylvania is definitely in Harris's pocket?
Well, I wouldn't say definitely because I don't have a model for it, but that's certainly an indicator that Trump is very worried about Pennsylvania if he's singling that out for fraud, because I think he knows if he loses Pennsylvania, it's pretty much all over. One more question. We're pretty late, and this is a teaching night, so I'm kind of tired.
All right. We'll do our last question as our Discord question. If you want to join our Discord, the link to that is in the description of this video or our Reddit. Our Discord question is, you mentioned early votes being birds in the hand, like you said today, but they can also be a signal to motivate the other party to catch up. Given the choice, would you prefer an early voting advantage or an election day advantage, and why?
100% to an early vote advantage. I don't think the average voter looks at these statistics and says, oh my God, I got to vote because of the early vote statistics. I don't think that motivates voters at all. I don't think they even know these numbers. Whereas, as I said, an early vote is a vote counted. On election day, you may have family issues, medical issues, work issues, uh, car may break down, there may be a bad weather, you may just decide I want to stay in bed, and there will be a fall off for those who claim they're going to vote on election day. There's no fall off for votes already cast, except maybe a tiny fraction of 1% of some that may be disqualified.
There you go. Here is our map. For one final time, Allan Lichtman's analysis of the Electoral College state by state. Not an official prediction, not linked to the keys, but his analysis. This is his official analysis. We will end our final poll, which was Florida, which has 55% thinking that Florida will go red for Trump. So
Yeah,
most people are in line with you, Dad.
absolutely. And discerning, you know, we're not just getting a reflection of bias, we're getting where it's worth, and we'll see a very reasoned, knowledgeable assessment of these states. I think we've set up a reasonable map. I'm not predicting that this is how it's going to go, but it would be not surprising if this is the way the states came down after the election.
Right. All right. With that, we will wrap up Lichtman Live. The good news for people is Lichtman Live post show is next on my channel at Sammy. Like the link to that is in the chat and in the description of the video. We still have 26,000 people watching. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to join us on election night. This will be the best election coverage, period. You can have CNN on in the background, whatever, but you gotta be here on Lichtman Live for election night. Dad, what are your final words to the people before election day?
Vote, vote, vote if you haven't voted already. But, in terms of tuning in to us for election night, I can tell you without boasting, I've called every election in modern memory before any of the networks called it. And then when in 2000, the networks were calling Florida for Gore, I said, wait a minute. Until those absentee ballots are counted, you can't assume anything about Florida.
There you go. Thank you all for joining us. See some of you in the Lichtman Live post show. Say goodnight, Dad.
Good night. See you on election day, and don't bite your nails down too far.